Welcome to the webinar. This is the open house for Yale's Business Perspectives for Creative Leaders program. We are excited to have you here with us today. My name is Kristen Sorek West, and I'm the Director of Marketing here at Yale School of Management Executive Education. Before we kick things off, a few housekeeping items. We are recording this webinar, and the recording will be distributed afterwards to all registrants. We encourage you to send us questions and comments throughout the webinar using the chat and the Q&A features. We're not holding the questions to the end. We're going to ask them along the way, answer them along the way. I'll be moderating the Q&A, and my executive education colleagues, Rachel Mileto and Joanne Legler, who are on the call as well, will be moderating the chat. Why don't you go and say a quick hi and hello in the chat, Rachel and Joanne, so people know your names. They can see them in the chat. And then what next? Hi, thanks, Joanne. Thank you, Rachel. We're here today to talk about business perspectives for creative leaders live online and what you can expect if you attend the program. In that spirit, our time together today is a time for discussion. We're going to answer your questions along the way, as I mentioned, and so please submit them as they come up. Odds are that if you have a question, someone else on the call has a very similar question in mind. The program is live online and it is hosted by us, Yale School of Management. It's designed with two goals in mind. First, to equip creative leaders like you to meet the challenges of management. And the second goal is to give participants the skills and perspectives they need to reach the next level in their careers. We want you to complete the program more confident in your business acumen and your ability to succeed as a leader. We're hosting the Business Perspectives for Creative Leaders live online program this spring, April 25th through May 30th. If you weren't already familiar with the program and the webpage, it is 6 weeks long, and there are social networking components on Tuesdays and academic sessions on Thursdays. As you've already seen, we have Philipp and Ellie, two fantastic past participants on the call with us today. They both attended the BPCL, that's my acronym for it. They both attended the program this past spring, so it's fresh on their minds. And I'm so looking forward to diving into the program and their experience with you all here today. I'm going to give a couple of brief introductions. Ellie Cotlar is a senior designer on the Inclusive Design and Culture team at Target and is based, as you saw in the chat, in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Her background is in apparel design and sustainable fashion education. She received her MA in sustainable design from Minneapolis College of Art and Design and her BFA in fashion design from Washington University in St. Louis. Philipp Pieh-Sandpeck is founder and CEO of Gebrüder Pixel in Austria. Philipp's journey from an early love of visual design has been anything but straightforward, with detours that included journalistic pursuits, a near stint as a military pilot, in studies in business and musicology. He toured across Europe as a DJ and shaped shows for Austria's biggest national radio station. Philipp eventually returned to his design roots, establishing a Vienna-based design agency in 2015 and co-founding a jewelry brand with his wife. And while he was in the US, he became a member of AIGA. Without further ado, it's nice to see you both, Ellie and Philipp. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
Let's kick things off by starting at the beginning. You two have different backgrounds professionally. So prior to attending the program, where were you at with your career? Let's have Philipp. Why don't you lead first?
Yeah. Hi, nice to meet you all. I'm Philipp. Thanks for the introduction, and good to see you again, Ellie. Cohort of 23, right? So yeah, where do I come from? I'm from I joined the design field in 2009, starting as a graphics designer, and in 2015 I founded a design agency, like you said, Kristen, in Vienna, Austria. We are now 6 people, so that was the state where I was when I joined the program. We were 6 people, and we help companies basically to build seamless brand experiences between the real world and the digital world. So that's what our mission could be described best. And we are some years behind in digitalization in Austria or in Europe, in Middle Europe, especially compared to the US. So that's something that you might not know, but that's sadly a fact. And for the past 3 years, I spent most of the time in the US because my wife started a job in DC, and so I had to manage my agency mostly with like 6 hours time shift, and it did work, but with some obstacles. So that was my situation before I joined the BPCL.
What about you, Ellie?
Nice to meet everyone as well, and I'm very happy to be here. So before I joined BPCL, my background is really primarily in apparel design. So I had worked at a few different design companies between New York and LA, and then I'd gone back to school for sustainable design through Minneapolis College of Art and Design, worked for about a year as a consultant at an NGO within sustainable design. And I think 9 months prior to the program, had started a new role that is a stronger focus in strategy and business integration in the inclusive design space.
So did you find when you were like you were in this position where you had just started a new role, did you know prior to starting that new role that had a larger focus on business strategy that you needed that acumen? Or is that once you joined the role, is that some like an awareness you developed and began seeking out a professional development program?
Yeah, both. So before the role, I did try to upskill where I could. But of course, when you get into a new role, then you realize like what the exact gaps are. And so I knew shortly after joining, I wanted to spend a little bit of time understanding exactly what I needed, but that I wanted to take a course for sure to fill in those gaps.
Wonderful. I want to go back to you, Philipp. You had mentioned that when you were taking this program, you took this program, you were based in Vienna at the time, yeah?
No, I was based basically in Washington, D.C. I was going back and forth, but most of the time I spent in Washington, D.C., yeah.
So was that
Mhm.
so was the live online format appealing for you because you were going back and forth?
Yeah, I would say yes, because it was something like it was like a backup plan for in the case that I needed to go back to Europe. But I knew that I had planned to stay in the US throughout the course, so from like March to June. So that that was the time span I spent in the US to be sure to be in the same time zone. With it's easier. You could do it from Austria too, but then you do something like until midnight, and that's very late to get new stuff into your head. So I'm happy that I was in the US while it was online, but it was appealing, and it was like just good to know that I would be able to attend from Austria too.
Wonderful. Ellie, what about you? Anything appealing about like why you participated in a live online program?
Yeah, well, I was only looking at online programs. I looked at a few courses that were in person for a week. So that was I felt like the time I could take away. But my concern with that was that it would be too much information in a condensed time period, and that I wouldn't have time to process and reflect. And for the online courses, it was appealing to find a class that was actually live because I do enjoy meeting new people. I want to learn from people's lived experiences. I'd like to have discussion with the faculty, and I know myself, and I would be a little bit less motivated or excited to log into something that was pre-recorded. So it was just also helpful to hold me accountable.
I totally understand that. And I gravitate actually to a live online format when I pursue professional development opportunities as well. So I'm hearing some motivations as to why you decided on Yale's program in particular, Ellie. Is there anything that you would want to add to that? Like any other motivations or specific features about the program that drew you to it?
Yes, I received a recommendation from a colleague, so I felt immediately like drawn to the program because she had endorsed it and it was someone I really trusted and I knew she had done a ton of research. I researched the faculty that would be the faculty that we would have in the program. I listened to whatever YouTube lectures I could find. And I really like loved what I had heard so far and was excited to learn more from the faculty. And then, initially I had started researching strategy courses. But once I found Yale's program, I liked that it focused on so many different areas of leadership, accounting, which I need a couple more lectures on that. I like the negotiation, the strategy portion. So there were so many like facets that were so applicable to what I was doing that it just felt like it made a lot of sense. And I like that it was for people, for creatives, because part of my worry with some courses is I don't have a business background. I wanted to feel like I could participate in discussions. And I wanted a course that honored a creative background and knew like what the gaps were there to supplement. So I felt like it was really well designed.
I'm so glad to hear that to hear your feedback on the course. I know that this course is well loved for some of the things that you just mentioned. It's been around since 2008, and like elevating creatives to a position of leadership and management is what this program is all about. It recognizes that really critical salient point that the technical expertise that has brought you this far in your career is not necessarily what is demanded of you as you get higher in your career, as you proceed in seniority in your career. And so being able to provide that those soft and hard skills that relate to business management and business strategy is what this program is all about. We did get a question in the chat while you were speaking, Ellie, about if there was homework or group projects, and you mentioned liking to learn from others and sinking your teeth into the material. I wondered if you could field that question first.
Sure. There was a little homework and it depended on the week. I don't think anything would have taken more than 2 hours or an hour and a half for that week. And Philip, please correct me too if I'm wrong or remembering incorrectly, but it was very manageable.
Yeah, I think the biggest work was in before the course, like studying the cases. There was like a homework or a preparation to study 30 cases, something like that. So it's a lot of reading and a lot of trying to reflect on that. I think that was the biggest part of the biggest chunk of work. But that was like you have a lot of time for that. You have like 6 or 8 weeks to do that. So yeah, it's I didn't find it too much overwhelming either. So like Ellie said, like 2 to 4 hours, I'd say, depending on how much you're reading from the reading list. If you want to do that, I did that. So I took like maybe 15 hours a week during the course, during the 6 weeks, including the time in the online course. So like reading all the books from the teachers. They are very inspirational, but it's nothing you need to do to take good things out of the course. I wanted to do that, so I spent some time on that.
So coming into the program, Philip, like how did you decide on this particular program? Were you looking at any other options?
Yeah, I mean, spending so much time abroad gave me the opportunity and time to reflect on things I basically never thought about in my everyday business life. With a distant view, I knew that we did well for sure with our company, with my little agency. But there are some more higher hanging fruits I wanted to reach. So that was my main motivation. I didn't quite know how to achieve that. I didn't quite know what's there to that can help me with that. So the first step was I got into AIGA, and from there I got some good inspirations, starting points, people to talk about that. So I was actively looking for some sort of course or program for design professionals that would provide new ideas and concepts. I had the feeling that I have a lack of, and that's why I decided on that course. It did exactly say what I wanted, or what I was looking for, like the perspectives. It's the business perspectives, and that sounded so appealing for me. Because I loved what I did, but I had the feeling that I felt a little bit stuck in my everyday business. And I learned about the course in a newsletter from the AIGA, and it was very promising. I didn't even knew that something like executive educations exist. We don't have that, or they're not that widespread in Europe. So I liked the idea to get back to university and keep yourself, on top of things. And also it felt like a unique opportunity to do a program of this level while I was in the US, because most likely I wouldn't find anything comparable in Europe. And also the teachers played a role. I had a look at the teachers' pages, at their CVs, and I looked them up, and I was impressed by the impact and their respective fields. And yeah, in the end, it was a no-brainer for me to decide on that course. Yeah.
We were talking prior to the call, Philipp, about how even though this program is US based, the material that it teaches transcends those geographic boundaries. Is that right? Could you elaborate on that a bit?
Yeah, what I found out and was, at first I was a little bit hesitant, because I thought, I got to learn some new concepts, but how US centric would that be? And will I be able to apply that to European, I would say, business culture? It's a little bit different. There's a lot of common things, but there is like a difference in culture and how to do business compared to Europe in the US. And that was like not the case at all. I have everything that I learned. Maybe we'll talk about that later, but everything that we learned was relevant for my everyday business life, the leading of my own businesses, and some things I was able to apply right away on day one when I learned them. Some of the things took some while to implement them into my organization, but it's super helpful. And I wouldn't say it's US centric. I have the feeling that it's very relevant for business, maybe all around the world. I wouldn't guarantee that, but at least for European businesses, it's super relevant.
It's kismet that you bring up wanting to speak to some examples of the material that you've learned that you've since applied into your day-to-day life, because we got two questions in that relate to just that. But there is some nuance between the two questions. So I want to ask the first one, can you give an example of something you learned that has been helpful in your everyday creative work? So Ellie, let's start with you.
Sure. So the first one that comes to mind is the innovation course. I really like how the course broke down kind of two almost work streams associated with innovation. So one, when you're ideating and creating the innovation, and then the second for when you are implementing the innovation. So there were real world examples that the instructor used to give us those perspectives. And as I'm starting new projects, like it helps me clarify as to which people to bring in to the project and at what stage, essentially. I don't want to give too much away for the course.
Appreciate it. What about you, Philipp?
Yeah, like Ellie said, it's like opening new doors in how you look at innovation and how it can work, and how it's possible. And the other thing that I was able, impacted my creative life too, is like the asking gap that we learned from Zoe Chance. It's like how to take more influence. but it's not like influencing other people's to, I don't know, to manipulate them or something like that, but how to influence things and how to take your own influence into processes and creative processes, and that helps me to do creative direction in my specific field, and to learn about that things about the asking gap. It changed my view on how to lead communications, how to lead creative processes, and yeah, it was mind-boggling in a very positive way.
Right, like there's this like sense of like a positive conflict, and how to address that in a conversation with a client or with even with your internal employees. Staying with you, Philipp, what about a specific example that of something that you were not doing before the program and that you're doing now that helps you in your organization?
I mean, like being a little bit more content and a little bit more aware of some dynamics in negotiations. That helped me a lot, because learning about how negotiations can work, the questions that you need to ask yourself, the questions that you need to ask others, that's an everyday issue. You're not just negotiating with clients. You're also negotiating with partners, with your employees. So it's an everyday issue, and to learn how to take a good view and a very positive view and a constructive view on negotiations, that helped me a lot in my everyday business life. And it's not like you'll learn about that. It's like looking for trees. Daly and Kane will talk to you about that, and you will learn what it has to do with trees. But that's something that was mind-opening, and it's opening new doors for me and my businesses too, and new opportunities, and that's the good thing about that. Yeah.
I could only imagine, as someone who's aspiring to expand their business and grow their business, I'm sure that negotiation is, like you say, just an everyday present part of your work. How about you, Ellie? Anything specific that you weren't doing before the program, but you've implemented since then?
Yeah, well, there was one course that covered decision making for leaders, and it kind of broke down two different types of checklists or rubrics to figure out which people to bring into what type of decisions. And I felt like that was really impactful and helpful, because it took like the emotion out and it made a lot of sense. So I shared that with the team that I sit on too, because I felt like it was something that was great for everyone to learn about.
I see a question in the Q&A, Ellie, and this one goes back to you. It's specifically about how innovation works in your current organization. You were talking about how the innovation session with Rodrigo was really impactful, and this particular participant or webinar guest wants to know what innovation means in your experiences, because the attitude or the experience of what innovation is varies significantly from organization to organization.
Okay, so we do have a specific innovation team, but for my role, it actually covers inclusive innovation as well. So it was just really relevant from I am working on two innovations within the inclusive space. So for me, it was just helpful in, as you know, I kick off new projects and framing what that looks like.
I hope that was helpful to our guests. I know I see innovation happening in our organization differently than in some of my previous experiences. Having a dedicated innovation department, I can only imagine what that feels like, Ellie. Must be a pretty exciting team.
Yeah, well, I don't actually sit on that team. I sit next to them, metaphorically. And but on my role, I do, because my focus is on inclusive innovation as well. There's even though I'm not a part of their team, there is a part that falls within that role. But I think in general, most teams are figuring out what innovation means for their own team to stay ahead. So I can't really speak to how it's used, across the board. I can just speak to my own experience.
That's what we want to hear.
Yeah.
Ellie and Philip, let's start with you, Philip. Did either of you learn any skills that relates to dealing with difficult customers?
Yeah, I mean, most of the things that we learned, the concepts that we learned, helped me a lot with dealing with customers. I mean, it gives you bigger concepts and perspectives on issues that you have. It doesn't say do this, then that will follow to your action. So I wouldn't say that it's like I don't know that specific, but it's like having a view. For example, innovation is a good example, because I have customers that I always had the feeling they speak a different language than I do, right? And then with the help of this course, I got a feeling for what they are talking about, what's there, to be empathic about their needs and what they want to do and want to try with what they talk about. And specifically in this case, we helped the Austrian ministry with an innovation, or the innovation team of the Austrian Innovation and Technology Ministry. And we actually, right now, we are finishing like a little innovation board game for them. So helping them, and I was like really feeling like I have the feeling about, or I understand what they talk about all the time and what they want to achieve and what they want to do and organize themselves for the innovation and growth mindset and all that stuff. So that was very helpful. But that's complex perspectives or complex concepts that stand behind that. And if you understand them, then when I was understanding them, I was able to facilitate like help for these kind of teams.
How about you, Ellie?
So for me, I'm not really customer facing, but in terms of just interpersonal relations and working with other team members and people across the organization, I feel like I learned a lot of lessons there. And I do feel like it was really helpful, especially the first week, kind of dove into an exercise that you would learn more about called reflective best self. You start inwards and then you kind of work your way out. But that affected how I interact with other people a lot. And I feel like it has helped maintain good relationships just across the board.
Yeah, I just want to add that's a good point, because it's like working from inside out. You're starting with yourself, reflecting on yourself, on your role and your personality and your leadership role, and then you start with every lesson you get a little bit more outwards, and in the end you start thinking about how I can do an impact, how can I impact processes and all that stuff. So that's a good point, and that was very valuable for me too. Yeah.
Philip, you had spoke earlier about how you were spending like 15 hours a week or so in the program, working on the material, including the session day. So can you walk us through what a session day looks like, what a typical Thursday would look like in the program?
The typical day, I mean, it's like Ellie said, or as we mentioned earlier, it's like from Monday to Wednesday, I tried to prepare the lesson, to get into the topic and to prepare the homework. Then you will start at around, I think it was 10, right? 10 a.m. When we started every day. We always started with like a 30 minutes easy introduction, getting a feeling for the topic of the day. Also, what was very valuable, always breaking out into little breakout rooms with 3 or 4 people, so you get enough time to socialize during the workshop days or the lessons, to get to know different people, get to know their views, be productive with them, to little mini tasks, and yeah, then until noon, then a little break, and in the afternoon, most of the time, hands-on strategies, hands-on advices, hands-on work in the classroom, how to solve different tasks together in your mini group. So I liked like how it was designed, and the time you get to interact with other not students, other attendants. That was very valuable for me, and also the reason how I was able to do some socializing during the day, and then follow up with them and meet with them. That was very great too.
Anything to add to that, Ellie?
I feel like you covered all of it. I would say the one thing I have to add, looking back, what I wish I would have done for myself is built-in reflection time on Fridays, because I feel like we learned so much great information. There were so many things I bookmarked to go back to later, but I didn't set up time for myself to do that. And I wish I would have.
It's so meaningful. Like as Philipp was describing, it's a full day. Like, yes, you start perhaps a little later in the morning, depending on your time zone, and you get a break for lunch, but like you're sitting in with sessions, you're participating actively with your peers, you're listening to faculty. Like, it is a full day. And so at the end of the day, or the next day for that matter, like to your point, Ellie, taking time for that download of like, this is what just happened, and this is how it's meaningful to me. So important, incredibly important. There's a wonderful question in the webinar chat about, did this program help you feel more confident in how you're able to contribute to a team? Let's even say lead a team. Philipp, I see you're nodding your head. Why don't you start?
I'd say that's the main, how I say that, that's the main. I felt empowered, I felt empowered, more confident, and also curious if I could implement all that stuff that I learned. And I was able to do so. I mean, basically, I was just keen to go out and conquer the world. That's the feeling that you go out with. There are so many things that you learn that feel right to be tried. And at the same time, I was also aware of a lot of stuff that I wanted to deep dive into. Some topics that we just scratched on the surface, understandably, because it's like just so much time that we had. But so I got out with a decent reading list, and worked on some topics afterwards too. But basically, the feeling that you get out with is a lot of confidence, and for me, a lot of confidence and empowerment, and that's and reassurance too. So I had the feeling that on this meta level, it was very beneficial for me.
How about you, Ellie?
Yeah, what you're saying really resonates, because I do feel like, especially in terms of like the leadership course and course content, it validated a lot of instincts that I had, and a lot of directions that felt right to me, and then just provided the like additional frameworks and support and backing to know that like I'm going in the right direction, and here is supplemental like data and information to support that. So I left feeling like I was already on this right track, and it felt really good.
For Ellie, for you, you said that a friend of yours, a colleague of yours, recommended this program to you. We have a question in the chat about what value does this program hold versus someone who might be considering a full MBA. And so I wanted to know if either of you had looked at degree programs as a next step for you to answer those needs that you mentioned, like needing a bit better business acumen or understanding of leadership strategies and who you are as a leader? Who wants to take it? Ellie?
Sure. I would say I've casually looked at MBA programs, nothing too serious. I had gone back to school earlier for a master's in sustainable design, and I want to be really careful about what is actually necessary and what sounds really interesting. So this course to me was a gateway into a lot of different topics. I know it serves ultimately a different purpose, I think, than an MBA, because that's I mean, it's such a, I feel like there are so many factors depending on where you are in your career that for me, I'm trying to lean away from MBA programs. So I'm doing what I can to supplement other ways.
Why were you leaning away from an MBA program?
Just because I've hesitant to go back to school for that period of time, step away from my career for that period of time, depending on, executive or full-time. Didn't want to incur the debt. And I just had mixed feelings on what is really necessary.
Absolutely. Did you, speaking of necessary, and you both of you, because you've already mentioned you were participating in this course while you were at work. Was that, let's start with you, Ellie. Did you have to do anything in advance of, like, before you even applied to the program? Did you have to speak with a supervisor, or did you have to navigate conversations around getting time away from the job or employer reimbursement for participating in the program? Anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, my manager was supportive, and there was an employee reimbursement program, so it was pretty seamless and didn't take any convincing.
And what about you, Philip? I mean, you're running your own business, so did you have any stakeholders that you needed to connect with, maybe besides your wife?
Yeah, I was going to say my wife, but no, it was my partner too. Because I founded my agency with a partner, and he was supportive too. So he was the only one that I really needed to ask and to speak to about that. But what I wanted to say about the MBA or the other educations to take, I mean, we're creatives, right? And all that business administration stuff, and especially all that accounting and financial controlling stuff. That's something. I mean, I gotta admit, I once studied economics, and I dropped out because it clearly wasn't my thing, you know. And being in a creative industry, most of you might feel the same. But also, like Ellie already said, Norman Barczyk's lesson on financial controlling was so great. It was so good because it was focused on the real things that you need to look for and need to look out for, and that's very positive. So I don't have the feeling that you need to do an MBA afterwards or something like that. It's like it does what it says. It's like business perspectives for creative leaders. And it gives you all the tools and all the mini tools and all the larger tools that you need to really succeed in the field. And for me personally, I got a little bit motivated again to get back into academia. So I started now a master's degree in user experience management in Vienna. So for me, it was like the start of, I had so much, it was so I was so motivated because it was motivating to get back into academia for me, and working with that inspiring people and getting to learn all that inspiring attendees like Ellie, and talking with them was so it did make me go to university again. So.
Oh, that's awesome to hear. One of the tenets of our organization is that leaders are learners. Like, they're by themselves, like, innately curious and hungry for knowledge, and to just ask questions and find answers. It's awesome to hear that you've enrolled in in another in a master's program. Congrats. We had I want to like stay on like the topic of participating in a program. And Philipp, it sounds like you're pursuing this master's program in addition to still managing your agency. In respect to business perspectives for creative leaders, was it hard at the time to balance the course workload with your full-time job? And I imagine like you would have other personal obligations outside of work. So was it tough to balance all of that during the program?
I mean, I'd say I have the feeling that it's easier for me because managing a company in Austria at like 10 a.m. in the US, it's like 4 p.m. in Europe. So I just got like 2 or 3 hours of like client contact to do at this time. So it fitted very well because I didn't have too much stuff on my schedule at that time of the day. But I can imagine that it's a little bit more it's a little bit more difficult for people who are based in the US and try to do that besides their work or get free time for doing all the workload that's required to take everything out of the course that you want to take out of it.
I could see that time difference working in your favor, like working later into the day. You're like, no one's going to respond to these emails right now. I got like a 4-hour window of just like silence.
Yeah, right.
For that US perspective, how about you, Ellie? Like, what was it like taking the course and also working full time?
It really honestly wasn't bad. The 6 weeks sort of flew by. Like I thought it was going to be more difficult to handle and to schedule meetings outside of that time period, but it really went by very, very quickly.
Were there any strategies you employed to help you manage your work? To help you manage the extra obligation for those 6 weeks?
I mean, I blocked off my calendar, but
shoot, that's a strategy.
Yeah, so it was fine, and then just found other times to meet and met, outside of some hours that you normally would meet, but it really was it was fine. And then I worked later on Thursday, so I essentially started working whenever the course ended. Some classes, some weeks we ended, I think, anywhere between like 3 o'clock and 4, maybe later for Central Time. So I was still able to work after and sometimes before. And if there were meetings that couldn't be moved, you just log off for a little bit to jump on a meeting. And some of the sessions were recorded, I think, as people needed. So I feel I don't want to answer that question incorrectly, but I think if there's a request or if there's a date that's going to be missed, they will record.
Yeah, that depending on the sense, like the specific subject matter, that's right. And if you feel like that you have a conflict coming up, like there was a schedule, like there's a meeting conflict you just can't avoid, alerting the program delivery team, who will in turn like talk to the faculty about recording it for you. We haven't yet touched on the topic of like what happens on Tuesdays. And so would either of you be like want to lead off with answering like how the networking social activities, how do those roll out for the both of you? What was that like?
Will you start, Ellie?
Sure. For a second, I was like, Tuesdays, what did happen on Tuesdays?
Yeah.
No, the networking sessions, I think they were maybe every other week, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
But it was a moment of reflection and connection. So you were put in different breakout sessions and given a topic, a suggested topic of typically reflecting on what you've learned or how you've activated what you've learned. So it was just a good moment to like connect and build relationships with people. I think I attended most of them. There was maybe one or I had to miss, but I enjoyed it.
Yeah, exactly. It was nice having them. For the social hours on Tuesdays, for that occasion, it was good that I was in the US because that would be a little bit too late to attend from Europe, because that would be like 1 or 2 a.m. in the morning, so wouldn't do that, I think. But like Ellie said, you get to learn the participants, and for me especially, I get to learn a lot of people from throughout the US, and I learned a lot about the US and about some cultural differences in the US, and how things are handled different. And they were so fun, all the talks, and the people that I learned, and some of them I met afterwards in person too. So that was very cool. In addition to all the the learning stuff and the experience and the stuff that I took out of the course, to get to learn professionals that are in the same area but have completely different views on stuff, and that's great. That was great for me.
Have you stayed in touch with anybody since the program? That's for you, Philip.
Yeah. I mean, I did what is it called? When you travel from, I traveled from New York to a road trip, right? I did a road trip. So, and for the road trip, I checked like on the map which cities or which areas I will pass and go through, and then I checked with the participants list, and then I got in touch with them, and I was happy to meet some of the folks, and it was so fun to meet them in person, and the talks that we had. And yeah, and also right now we now have a group on LinkedIn, so we can stay in touch, we can follow all the others. So I find it very cool to stay connected, and it's incredible to keep track of all the steps that the people of our cohort take right now after we finish the course. And yeah, and I mean, they're all inspiring people. I mean, from huge companies like the New York Times and Meta and Macy's to self-employed creative directors, and yeah, it's super interesting people that you get to learn.
I did not know that you went on a road trip post-program. That's fantastic. Did you visit Ellie?
No, unfortunately,
I wasn't on that line.
We didn't pass Minneapolis, so
it's a little out of the way.
How about you, Ellie? Did you stay in touch with anybody since the program?
Yeah, well, I had the chance to meet with someone who lived in Minneapolis in person, so we've met up a couple of times since the program. I did, have the opportunity to schedule like just some Zoom check-ins to see how a few people were doing, which was great. And I'd love to do more of that. So this is a great reminder for me to start checking in with the cohort. And like Philip said, there's the LinkedIn group. And then someone from our cohort also started a women's group. So there's been like monthly check-ins for that, which has been really nice.
So that's so cool. They like the homegrown, the social connections are fantastic to hear about. We have 10 more minutes left in our allotted time, so if you have any additional questions, please throw them into the chat or in the Q&A now, so we can make time, we can be sure to answer them here with the group. So let's just start wrap up with a couple of final questions. How have you felt since now you're like, what, 6 months out, almost a year out from the program? Any final thoughts on like what you're still holding on to since your program experience and what you're excited to share with others? Start with you, Ellie.
I think, it rotates depending on what's like the current project at hand. But I would say just maybe the lesson that left the biggest impact was the first lesson on reflected best self, because it really does help shape how I interact with people. And so I'm sorry, can you repeat the actual question?
Yeah. like almost a year out of the program, what are you holding on to most? Like what is most top of mind? What experience is most top of mind since the program?
Yeah, so I would say it would be the lessons learned from that on, really how to connect, engage with other people and in a way that kind of makes everyone like leaves with a great impression, makes people motivated, excited. So that I would say is my final answer.
How about you, Philip?
Yeah, for me, I think it's like I mentioned, like I had the feeling that I was a little bit stuck in my situation, and that feeling completely disappeared. And yeah, and like I said, some of the takeaways of the course obviously took some time to be implemented into my business, but I am super happy with the outcome, and that always resonates with what I learned in the course. And I think back about what we talked about, and also like Ellie said, you bookmark stuff and you try to get back to that. And sometimes I actually do that because I can remember that we talked about something, and I try to look up and follow my notes and try to get back to that. But for me personally, I mean, my business today is more efficient. It's more profitable. I mean, yeah, I'm not handling the millions. It's like I'm managing 6 people and some projects. Some are more complicated, some are less complicated. But yeah, and also I have the feeling that on the people side of the equation, it attracts more talented people. Like it did before, and our employees are happier too. So I wouldn't say that's just feelings; it's also the numbers that back that. So yeah, it's and that's just the beginning because it's just 6 months since we dropped out of the program. So very excited to see all these little improvements come to me in the next month.
But I sure hope you stay in touch and relay that back to us. I also hope that you do plan another road trip out to the Midwest and that LA is your first stop.
Please, I would love that.
Yeah,
So
you gotta see like the northern states. I didn't see them at all. So starting at the five Great Lakes, and yeah, so
yeah, those great states. Those are sometimes they're characterized as flyover states, but they have a lot to offer.
yeah.
I'm from Michigan, so I feel like I need to like champion that hard. So I don't have any more questions. You both have been so gracious with your time and so forthcoming with wonderfully honest and rich answers. So, and I don't have any more questions in the chat or in the Q&A. So I'm going to conclude this and just say thank you both for joining us on this call and for this wonderful hour of conversation. It's been so great talking with you both and having so many great questions fed to us through the chat. Thank you, webinar attendees, for giving us so many meaty questions to sink our teeth into. I'm going to say a few more things. Like you mentioned at the top, Business Perspectives is happening for creative leaders, is happening again this spring. Please let us know if you have any questions or if you're interested in learning more. We would love for you to attend, obviously, but if your paths, lead you in a different direction, we completely understand. Whatever path you choose, we hope that this time together was helpful, and that if we can be helpful along the way, just please reach out because we want to be there. My contact information and resources to learn more about the program, as well as ways to stay connected with Philipp and Ellie. If you have any additional questions, will be sent to you in a follow-up email. So thank you again for your time, and we hope you enjoyed the webinar and have a great rest of your day.